I don't think the worst day of my marriage was the first time my wife cheated on me. I think the worst day was the day I realized I was relieved she had a reason for acting distant. That probably doesn't make sense. It wouldn't have made sense to me back then either. At the time, I thought our marriage was happy, not perfect, just normal. We'd been together 7 years. We had routines, inside jokes, the same stupid argument about whose turn it was to take the trash out. The kind of life that feels boring while you're living it and precious after it's gone. The change happened slowly. At first, she just seemed distracted. I'd be talking and she'd stare past me. I'd tell a story from work and she'd nod without hearing a word. Some nights she'd sit on the couch scrolling through her phone with a smile I hadn't seen in months. Whenever I asked what was funny, she locked the screen. Not quickly, not suspiciously, just casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember noticing it and immediately feeling guilty. That's the kind of husband I was. The second something felt wrong, I assumed I was the problem. Maybe I was being insecure. Maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention. Maybe I was imagining things. People talk about intuition like it's this magical warning system. Mine worked perfectly. I just spent months convincing myself not to listen to it. One Friday night, she told me she was having drinks with coworkers. Nothing unusual. I kissed her goodbye, told her to have fun. She left around 7. By midnight, she still wasn't home. I texted her, no response. I called, straight to voicemail. At 1 in the morning, I was sitting in the dark living room staring at my phone. Not angry, worried. I genuinely thought something terrible had happened. Car accident, medical emergency, anything. At 1:43 a.m., she finally walked through the front door. The first thing I noticed was that she wasn't drunk. The second thing I noticed was that she smelled different. Not perfume, cologne, a man's cologne. I knew it immediately. The smell hit me before she even spoke. She froze for half a second when she saw me awake. Just half a second. Then she smiled. "Why are you still up?" I remember opening my mouth. I remember the question forming in my head. Where are you? Who are you with? Why do you smell like another man? But before I could say any of it, she walked over, kissed me on the forehead, and laughed. You look exhausted. Then she went upstairs, and I sat there, alone, listening to her footsteps, trying to convince myself there was a completely innocent explanation. I stayed awake until almost 4 in the morning inventing those explanations. Coworker hugged her goodbye. Crowded bar. Shared Uber. Anything. Everything. Because the alternative was unthinkable. The next afternoon, I was doing laundry when I found something in the pocket of her jacket. A receipt. A hotel receipt. For a room rented the night before. And the name on the reservation wasn't hers. It was a man's. The strangest part? Even then, I wasn't sure I wanted the truth. Because deep down, I already knew exactly what it was going to cost me. I stared at that receipt for almost an hour. Not because I didn't understand what it meant. Because I did. Every detail was there. The hotel name, the room number, the time, the date, the man's name. I must have read it 50 times, maybe more. I kept expecting some hidden detail to appear, some explanation I'd missed, a typo, a coincidence, anything. Instead, every time I looked at it, it became more real. My wife was in the kitchen making coffee when I finally walked downstairs. The receipt was folded in my pocket. My heart was pounding so hard it made me feel sick. I remember thinking that this was it. This was the moment everything changed. The moment she told me the truth. The moment our marriage either survived or ended. She looked up and smiled when I entered. Morning. Just that. Morning. Like the world wasn't about to split in half. I sat down across from her. My hands were shaking. She noticed. Are you okay? I pulled the receipt out and put it on the table. For a second, her face went completely blank. No panic, no guilt, nothing. Then she looked at me and started crying. Instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. I wasn't prepared for that. I had prepared for denial, anger, excuses, not tears. Definitely not tears. She buried her face in her hands and started sobbing. The sound of it hit me like a punch. Within 30 seconds, my certainty began slipping away. Within a minute, I was comforting her. I know how pathetic that sounds. Trust me, nobody knows better than I do. But that's what happened. I ended up moving my chair next to hers, putting my hand on her back, asking what was wrong. What was wrong? As if I were the one who'd found her crying instead of the other way around. When she finally spoke, the words came out broken between sobs. She said she felt alone. She said she'd been struggling for months. She said she thought I didn't love her anymore. She said the man at the hotel listened to her. Nothing happened, she claimed. They'd talked. That was all. She swore it, over and over. She swore on everything. Our marriage, our future, my life, her lies, every sacred thing she could think of. and I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored every impossible detail. The room, the late night, the lies, the smell of another man's cologne. All of it. I ignored all of it, because believing her meant I didn't have to destroy my world. I didn't have to become a divorced man. I didn't have to lose the person I'd built my entire life around. So, I accepted the explanation. Not because it made sense, because I needed it too. That night she wrapped her arms around me in bed and whispered that she loved me. I cried into the pillow after she fell asleep, quietly, so she wouldn't hear. I thought we'd survived something. I thought honesty had saved us. I thought the nightmare was over. 3 weeks later, I saw his name light up her phone while she was in the shower, and that's when I realized she'd never actually stopped talking to him. The message appeared for less than 2 seconds. That was all it took. His name flashed across the screen and disappeared. Most people would have picked up the phone immediately. Most people would have opened the conversation. Most people would have demanded answers. I stood there staring at it like it was a loaded gun. The shower was running upstairs. I could hear her humming. Completely relaxed, completely comfortable, and for some reason, that hurt more than the message itself. Because if she was nervous, it would mean she cared. If she was hiding something carefully, it would mean she understood the risk. But she wasn't nervous. She wasn't careful. She was comfortable, as if she'd already calculated exactly what I would do. Or rather, what I wouldn't do. The phone lit up again. Another message. Same name. I felt my stomach drop. My hands started trembling. I picked up the phone, then immediately put it back down. Picked it up again. Put it back down again. I must have repeated that stupid little cycle 10 times. I didn't want proof. That was the truth. Proof would force me to act. Proof would demand consequences, and consequences terrified me. The phone eventually went dark. The shower stopped. I returned to the couch and sat exactly where I'd been before. By the time she came downstairs, I had already rehearsed my denial. She sat beside me, rested her head on my shoulder, and I smelled his cologne again. Not strongly, just enough. Just enough to make me question my own senses. You okay? He asked. There was genuine concern in her voice. That's the part that still confuses me. She could lie to me and sound concerned at the same time. I don't know how people do that. I never learn. I asked her who he'd been. The question slipped out before I could stop it. She froze, only for a second. Then she smiled, a small smile, almost amused. Oh my God, those were her first words. Not an explanation, not a denial, just, oh my God. Like I'd accused her of something ridiculous. I told her I'd seen the messages. She sighed, actually sighed. Then she explained that he was just a friend she'd met recently, a friend helping her through a difficult time, a friend who understood her. Every word sounded rehearsed. Every word sounded familiar. I remember staring at her while she talked, and something strange happened. For a brief moment, I didn't believe her, not even a little. For one clear, beautiful second, reality broke through. I knew she was lying. Oh, I absolutely knew it. And then she started crying again, and reality disappeared, just like that. An hour later, I was apologizing for invading her privacy. 2 hours later, I was promising to trust her more. 3 hours later, she was asleep in my arms, and I was staring at the ceiling wondering why I felt guilty. The next morning, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went outside to take a call. I looked through it. For the first time, what I found should have ended my marriage. Instead, it became the beginning of something much worse. I wish I could tell you I found one message, one photo, one piece of undeniable proof. Something clean, something simple. I didn't. What I found was worse, because it wasn't one mistake. It was an entire secret life. The moment I unlocked her phone, I knew. Not because of what I saw, because of how much there was to see. Dozens of messages, hundreds, conversations stretching back months, inside jokes I didn't understand, olens, flirting, photos, late-night conversations that lasted until 3 or 4 in the morning. I sat at the kitchen table reading them while my hands went numb. There wasn't a single shocking revelation, just wave after wave after wave, each message making the previous one hurt more. The thing I remember most wasn't the sexual stuff. It was the affection, the tenderness, the attention, the version of her I hadn't seen in years. She was funny with him, interested in him, curious about him, excited by him. Reading those conversations felt like reading messages from a completely different woman, one I hadn't spoken to in a very long time. Then I found the hotel discussion. Not hints, not implications, a discussion. The room, the time, the night, everything. My chest tightened so suddenly I thought I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe. I genuinely couldn't breathe. I remember grabbing the edge of the table and trying to inhale. Not there. My vision blurred. My fingers tingled. My heart was racing so fast it felt dangerous. At the time, I didn't know what a panic attack was. I thought I was dying. I slid onto the kitchen floor convinced I needed an ambulance. Instead, I sat there shaking while the realization settled over me. She lied about everything. Every tear, every promise, every apology, every single word. The front door opened a few minutes later. She walked inside carrying groceries. The image still feels surreal. There I was sitting on the floor looking like I'd been hit by a truck. And there she was carrying bread and orange juice. Normal. Completely normal. She looked at me, looked at her phone in my hand, and immediately understood. For the first time since all this started, she didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look surprised. She just set the groceries down, slowly, then sat across from me. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. Finally, I asked the question that had been destroying me for months. What? My voice barely sounded human. She looked tired, not guilty, tired. Then she said something I'll never forget, something that changed the entire course of my life. She looked me directly in the eyes and said, "Because I knew you wouldn't leave." And for the first time, I wasn't sure she was wrong. I expected that sentence to make me leave. That's the part that haunts me now. I expected it to be the breaking point, the moment clarity finally arrived, the moment I stood up, packed a bag, and walked out. Instead, I just sat there, staring at her, trying to understand what she'd said. Because there was no apology attached to it, no excuse, no tears, no performance, just the truth, cold and simple. Because I knew you wouldn't leave. The terrifying thing was that she sounded almost relieved, like she was finally tired of pretending. I asked her if she loved him. She shrugged, actually shrugged. I don't know. I asked if she'd slept with him. She said yes, just yes, nothing else. No explanation, no hesitation, no built. The answers came so easily that they felt unreal, like I was talking to a stranger wearing my wife's face. At some point I started crying, not dramatic crying, just tears, quiet tears running down my face while I sat there. She watched them, expressionless. Then she said something that completely destroyed me. "You do?" I remember shaking my head immediately. "No, yes, you did. No, you do." And the worst part, somewhere deep inside me, I knew she was right. I had known, not consciously, not fully, but I had known. Every late night, every unexplained absence, every locked screen, every lie that made no sense. I knew, I just chose not to know, because reality was unbearable. Eventually she moved closer, took my hands, started speaking softly. The familiar voice returned, the gentle one. The voice that always appeared when she sensed me slipping away. She told me she was confused. She told me she needed help. She told me she didn't want to lose me. She told me nobody understood her like I did. And there it was, the thing that kept pulling me back. Because even after everything, I still wanted to be special to her. I still wanted to matter. I still wanted to believe I was the person she couldn't live without. Looking back, I think that's the moment my self-respect died. Not when she cheated, not when she lied. When I accepted comfort from the person who caused the wound. When she became both the knife and the bandage. That night we ordered takeout, watched television, acted almost normal. As insane as that sounds. Around midnight she fell asleep on the couch with her head against my shoulder. I sat there for hours without moving, just staring into the dark. Thinking about the fact that my wife had admitted everything. Thinking about the fact that I had stayed. And slowly realizing something terrifying. I wasn't staying because I forgave her. I was staying because I didn't know who I was without her. 3 months later, I discovered she was seeing someone else. Not the same man, a new one. And somehow, that hurt even more. The second man should have devastated me. Instead, he confused me. That's when I started realizing something was seriously wrong with me. Because normal people have a limit. At least I think they do. A line. A point where the pain becomes too much. A point where survival finally overrides attachment. But when I found out about the second man, my first reaction wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even shock. It was exhaustion. Pure exhaustion. Like a soldier hearing another shell explode somewhere in the distance. Not surprised, just tired. I found out by accident. It was always by accident. She never confessed. She never volunteered information. The truth simply leaked out faster than she could contain it. A restaurant receipt, 2 meals, 2 drinks, a date and time when she was supposedly visiting her sister. I remember staring at it and feeling nothing. Not at first, just emptiness. I actually sat there waiting for the pain to arrive, waiting for the familiar panic, the racing heart, the nausea, the shaking hands. Instead, there was silence, a strange emotional numbness. For a few hours, I thought maybe I was finally getting stronger. Maybe I'd reached acceptance. Maybe I'd stopped caring. I couldn't have been more wrong. because the pain didn't disappear. It changed shape. That night, I couldn't stop imagining him. Not what they were doing. Oh, his face, his voice, his body, his life. I opened social media and started searching. I found him within 20 minutes. Then I spent 6 hours studying him. 6 hours! I know because the sun was coming up when I finally closed my laptop. He was taller than me, athletic, confident looking, the kind of smile that made people trust him immediately. I zoomed into photos like a detective, comparing everything. His jawline, his hair, his clothes, even his posture. Every comparison ended the same way. He won. By morning, I'd convinced myself that any woman would choose him over me. Not just my wife, any woman. I called in sick to work, then spent the entire day looking at pictures of strangers my wife might someday sleep with. That's not an exaggeration. My brain was breaking. I just didn't recognize it yet. Days later, I finally confronted her. She barely denied it. Valet. She seemed annoyed more than anything else, as if I were bringing up an old conversation, as if we both already knew how this would end. "You've been distant lately," she said. Those were her first words. Not sorry, not no. You've been distant lately. I remember laughing, a horrible laugh, the kind that escapes when your mind can't process what's happening. She stared at me. I stared back, and for one brief moment, I saw something in her expression. Not guilt, not remorse, certainty, absolute certainty. She knew I wasn't leaving. She knew before I did, and that realization terrified me more than the affair itself. Because for the first time, I started wondering whether I was becoming predictable, whether my wife knew me better than I knew myself, whether she could see the weakness I'd spent years trying to hide. That night, lying awake beside her, another thought entered my head, a thought that would eventually consume me. What if she wasn't choosing better men? What if she was choosing them because she knew I'd let her? And once that idea got inside my head, it never left. After that, I stopped looking for proof that she was cheating. I started looking for proof that I was worth cheating on. Read that again. Because that's how twisted my thinking had become. I wasn't trying to understand her anymore. I was trying to understand what was so fundamentally wrong with me that this kept happening. I became obsessed with finding the answer. Maybe I wasn't attractive enough. Maybe I wasn't successful enough. Maybe I wasn't masculine enough. Maybe there was some invisible flaw everyone could see except me. Every waking moment became an investigation. I started going to the gym twice a day. Not because I wanted to get healthier, because I wanted to become someone she couldn't replace. I bought new clothes, changed my hairstyle, started watching videos about confidence, body language, relationships. I even practiced smiling differently in the bathroom mirror. God, that one hurts to admit. 36 years old, standing alone in a bathroom, practicing smiles, trying to become worthy of my own wife. The more I improved, the worse I felt, because nothing changed. Not that she'd compliment me occasionally, tell me I looked good, then disappear for 6 hours and refuse to answer her phone. The contradiction was driving me insane. One moment she'd hold my hand in public, the next she'd vanish for an entire evening. One moment she'd tell me she loved me, the next she'd lock herself in another room to text someone. Reality stopped feeling stable. Everything became contradictory. Everything became uncertain. I started second-guessing my own memories. Sometimes she'd deny things she'd said the day before, not aggressively, casually, like the conversation had never happened, and somehow I'd end up questioning myself. Maybe I remembered it wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was becoming paranoid. That word followed me everywhere. Paranoid. She used it constantly. At first I fought it. Eventually I adopted it. Then I became it. Every sound woke me up. Every notification made my stomach drop. Every unknown number became a threat. I checked windows before bed. Checked locks twice. Then 3 times. Then 5. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie awake beside her listening to her breathe. Watching the ceiling. Watching the clock. Waiting for morning. Waiting for answers. Waiting for peace. None ever came. Around that time, I had my first real breakdown. Not a panic attack. Not anxiety. A breakdown. I was at work, sitting in a meeting. Someone asked me a simple question. I don't even remember what it was. And suddenly I couldn't understand the words coming out of their mouth. Everything sounded distant, like I was underwater. The room felt unreal. My hands felt unreal. My own voice felt unreal. I excused myself and locked myself in a bathroom stall, then sat there shaking for nearly an hour, staring at the floor, trying to remember who I used to be. The scary part wasn't that I couldn't find the answer. The scary part was realizing I couldn't remember when I'd started asking the question. That night, I came home early. Her car was gone. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even curious anymore. I just sat in the empty house and waited. Hours passed. Darkness filled the rooms. Still I waited. Around midnight, headlights appeared in the driveway. I walked to the window, and for the first time in years, I saw something I was never supposed to see. My wife wasn't alone, and the way she looked at him made me realize I'd been mourning my marriage long before it actually died. I should have looked away. That's what a healthy person would have done. Closed the curtain, walked upstairs, refused to watch. Instead, I stood there in the dark like a ghost inside my own house. Watching. The cars sat in the driveway with the engine running. Neither of them got out immediately. They were talking. Love it. Existing inside some private little world. I couldn't hear anything through the glass, but I didn't need to. The body language said enough. Then she smiled, and something inside me stopped. Not because she was with another man. I'd seen evidence of that before. Not because she was happy. People are allowed to be happy. No, it was because I recognized that smile, or at least I used to. Years ago, that smile belonged to me. It was the smile she used to give me when we first started dating. The smile she'd give me when I surprised her. The smile she'd give me when she thought I wasn't looking. I'd spent years trying to earn that smile back. Yes, and there it was, given away effortlessly, like it had never belonged to me at all. I watched her touch his arm. He said something. She laughed, then she leaned over and kissed him. Simple as that. No hesitation, no fear, no urgency, just a casual kiss, like a wife kissing her husband before work. The normalcy of it nearly broke me. Not forbidden, not secret, normal. That was the word that haunted me. Because somewhere along the way, her affairs had become normal, at least for her, maybe for both of us. I don't know. The car eventually pulled away. She walked toward the house. I ran back into the living room and sat on the couch, my heart pounding, my hands trembling, trying to look natural, trying to look like a man who hadn't just watched his own marriage from behind a curtain. The front door opened. She stepped inside. Tommy smiled. You're home early. That's all. No panic, no guilt, no concern. Not there. I stared at her. Waiting. Surely she'd realize. Surely she'd see something in my face. Surely she'd understand that this time was different. But she didn't. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her purse, started talking about her day. Her day. As if I hadn't watched her kiss another man 10 minutes earlier. As if reality hadn't split open. As if we were discussing the weather. I remember feeling dizzy. Actually dizzy. Like the room was tilting. She eventually noticed I was quiet. What's wrong? I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I asked a question. One simple question. Do you think I'm stupid? The words surprised both of us. For the first time all evening, her smile disappeared. Just for a second. Then it came back. Smaller. Careful. Measured. And that's when I understood something terrifying. She wasn't wondering whether I'd seen them. She was calculating how much I'd seen. The answer would determine which version of the lie she needed to tell. And sitting there looking at the woman I'd loved for most of my adult life, I suddenly realized I no longer knew when she was telling the truth. Or worse, maybe she knew I couldn't tell. Maybe she knew I hadn't been able to tell for years. Then she sat down across from me and asked a question that made my blood run cold. How long were you watching? She asked it calmly, not defensively, not nervously. Calmly, like someone asking whether I'd seen the end of a movie. For a second, neither of us moved. I just stared at her, trying to understand what had happened. Because that wasn't supposed to be her reaction. People who get caught are supposed to deny it. Panic. Why? Invent excuses. They aren't supposed to ask for clarification. They aren't supposed to sound prepared. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't the first time she'd imagined this conversation. She'd been expecting it. Maybe not today. Maybe not this exact moment. But eventually, she'd always known this day would come. The difference was that she wasn't afraid of it. I was. I told her I'd seen enough. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Because she relaxed. Actually relaxed. As if I'd accidentally given her useful information. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, studied me, not like a wife looking at her husband, like a doctor evaluating a patient, like she was trying to determine how serious the damage was. Then she asked, "Are you leaving?" Just like that. No apology, no explanation, no tears, no attempt to defend herself. Just, "Are you leaving?" I wish I could tell you I said yes. I wish I could tell you I stood up, walked out, found whatever remained of my dignity. But the truth is far uglier. I couldn't answer, because I didn't know, and she knew I didn't know. The silence stretched between us. Then something happened that still makes me sick when I think about it. She smiled, not cruelly, not mockingly, just knowingly, like she'd received confirmation of something she'd suspected all along. "You're sick," she said quietly. "That's the problem." I remember feeling my stomach tighten. "What problem?" She tilted her head. "The fact that you still don't know." Those words hit harder than any affair ever had. Because they were true. I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. Part of me wanted to leave. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to disappear. And another part, some broken, pathetic part, still wanted her to choose me. Even after everything. I hate admitting that. It's true. I still wanted her approval. I still wanted her love. I still wanted the person destroying me to save me. She stood up and walked toward the kitchen. The conversation seemed over to her. Over. As if we'd been discussing bills. As if she hadn't just shattered whatever remained of my self-respect. I sat there listening to cabinets open and close. Listening to dishes clink. Listening to my wife continue her evening. And for the first time, a terrifying thought entered my mind. What if she wasn't the reason I was trapped anymore? What if the prison door had been open for years? What if the thing keeping me here wasn't her manipulation? What if it was me? I didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the night after that. Instead, I started replaying every year of our marriage in my head. Every lie, every apology, every betrayal, every time I'd chosen hope over reality. By the fourth night, I wasn't sure which memories were real anymore. And then, around 3 in the morning, I found something in our bedroom that made me question whether I'd ever truly known my wife at all. By the fourth night without sleep, my brain felt infected. That's the only way I can describe it. Everything hurt. My thoughts hurt. My memories hurt. Even silence hurt. I'd lie in bed staring into darkness, replaying conversations from years ago, searching for clues. Moments I used to remember fondly now felt suspicious. Anniversaries, vacations, birthdays, random Tuesday afternoons. I kept asking myself the same question. How much of it was real? The problem was that once that question enters your mind, it spreads. It touches everything. Soon you're not questioning specific memories. You're questioning your entire life. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and started wandering through the house. I wasn't looking for anything. I just couldn't sit still. The bedroom felt contaminated. The living room felt contaminated. Every room contained some version of us. Some memory. Some ghost. I opened drawers, closets, old storage boxes. Not searching, just moving. Trying to outrun my own thoughts. Then I found an old photo album. One we hadn't touched in years. I sat on the floor and started flipping through it. There we were. Arms wrapped around each other. Two people who looked absolutely convinced they'd spend their lives together. I stared at those photographs for a long time, trying to recognize myself, trying to recognize her. Neither felt familiar. Then something slipped from between the pages. A folded piece of paper. All yellowed with age. At first, I thought it was an old receipt. Instead, it was a note. Handwritten. Her handwriting. I recognized it immediately. The note was addressed to me. Years old. Maybe from before we got married. Maybe earlier. I don't know. My hands were shaking too much to care. I unfolded it, and I started reading. The words weren't complicated. They weren't dramatic. In fact, they were painfully simple. She wrote that she loved me. She wrote that I made her feel safe. She wrote that she couldn't imagine her future without me. She wrote that meeting me was the best thing that had ever happened to her. I must have read those lines 20 times, then 30, then 50, because I needed to know whether they felt true. I needed to know whether the woman who wrote them had ever existed, or whether she'd always been a fantasy I created. And that's when it finally happened. The thing I'd been avoiding for years. I stopped thinking about her. For the first time, I thought about myself, not who she wanted me to be, not who I thought I needed to become. The version of me that existed before all of this. The version that laughed easily, slept peacefully, trusted people. The version that didn't spend nights comparing himself to strangers. The version that didn't measure his worth through someone else's betrayal. And suddenly I understood something that should have been obvious. I wasn't mourning my marriage. Not really. I'd been mourning myself. For years. Every affair, every lie, every apology, every humiliation. I'd watched pieces of myself disappear, and somewhere along the way, I'd become so focused on losing her that I never noticed I'd already lost me. I sat there on the bedroom floor until sunrise, holding that note, watching daylight slowly fill the room. The house was silent. The marriage was silent. Everything was silent. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt honest. I wish I could tell you this story ends with some dramatic confrontation. A divorce. A speech. A perfect act of redemption. It doesn't. Real life rarely gives you endings that clean. What I can tell you is this. That morning, when my wife woke up, she found me sitting alone in the living room. And when she looked at me, something in her expression changed. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain. Because the man sitting there wasn't begging for answers, wasn't asking for reassurance, wasn't trying to earn her love. He was just sitting quietly, looking at a stranger and realizing she wasn't the one he was afraid to lose anymore. This is the end of the story. Don't forget to share with your friends, comment, like, and subscribe.